I need you to know it really is a real honor for me to be invited into a moment like this. One of the things that God taught me about preaching about 6 or 7 years ago is that I'm not initiating a conversation between him and you. I'm really stepping into something that's already happening, that God has been drawing you close and communicating with you since the day you were born, and certainly since the day you were able to understand anything. And all I get to do in these moments is to just step in for a little while, help things along, and then step out. And as I said, I consider it a real honor and a joy and a privilege that I don't deserve. And it's also very humbling for many reasons, one of which is, and I feel this every time I come to this particular moment in a setting like this, one of which is just, I think about how little we know each other, how little I know about you, and even you know about me, and yet here I am. I'm going to be here every week, and I'm trying to tell you, here's what you should believe about God, and here's how you should live in light of the truth of who things are. And if you're a person who's going to be sitting there thinking, man, like, you don't even know me. Like, I just want to acknowledge there's a lot I don't know about you. I don't know a lot of this silly stuff about you. I don't know what your favorite topping on ice cream is, you know. I don't know where you live or what you like to do for fun or what you don't like to do for fun. I don't know what your favorite movies or songs are. And more deeply, I don't know what your hopes and dreams are. I don't know about your fears. I don't know about your nightmares. I don't know about some of your favorite memories or some of the most painful things that have happened to you in the past. There's so much I don't know, and it's easy for me to almost get overwhelmed by this, and yet I'm not too worried about it because I think there's enough for us to build on. I do think that I do know enough about you to speak into your life. I'll tell you this, I know you're burdened. And I know you're distracted, and I know you know it because it didn't take you more than 5 seconds last night and this morning to identify, this is my burden. This is my distraction. I also know that you have ideas about God in your mind that are going to drive the rest of your life. It's been said that what you think about God is the most important thing about you because it's what's going to determine your steps. And when I say what you think about God, I'm not talking about like how you might talk about God at church. I'm not talking about whether you could come up with the right answers. I'm talking about what actually comes to your mind and to your heart when you think about or hear the word God. What you think he's like. Whether you think he's stronger than you, smarter than you, whether you think he's perfectly loving, whether you think he judges sin and or forgives sin, whether he's somebody who you want around or whether you think he thinks you're someone he runs around. Like what you think about God really is going to direct all the steps that you take for as long as you get to live in this life and then in the next. And if this is anywhere close to true, I'm so glad we have Psalm 23. I'm so grateful for this particular portion of the Bible. And if you have a Bible, I'm going to ask you to open it up to Psalm 23, or if you're going to follow along on your app, your Bible app, that's fine. Whatever your leader's good with, I'm good with. I'd love for you to turn there, and we're going to really open this up. And as Mikey said, we're going to be talking about this every morning. And y'all, I love this. It's got to be one of my favorite parts of the whole Bible. Truly, I'm not just saying this. When I found out this is what we were talking about this year, I could not have been more delighted. It is, it's my favorite chapter, man. It really is. And I know, again, y'all don't know a whole lot about me. I'm a Bible professor. Like, that's what I do for a living. I teach Bible at Ozark Christian College. So, like, I love Ozark. Awesome. I live in the Bible, and I teach a lot of it, and I try to read as much of it as I can. But the part of the Bible that I come back to the most is Psalm 23. There was a season of my life, I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I was just in a real dry place with life and with God and everything. Maybe y'all have been there. And I just needed something to kind of just jumpstart or just get me somewhere, get me out of this funk. And so I decided to spend like 6 months where the only part of the Bible I read was Psalm 23. Now, again, I love the whole book, but for 6 months, every time I opened the Bible, I only read Psalm 23, and I just read it over and over and over again. And I look back on that as one of the richest, most difficult, but richest seasons of my life. I love this chapter. We've taught it to our kids, too. My wife, Beth, and I both teach together at Ozark, and she's actually going to be here tomorrow. She's my favorite preacher in the world. She's going to preach tomorrow night, so y'all be ready. And we've been teaching our children about this, our daughter and our son. My daughter is here with me, Claire. She's my sweetest, and she's spending these couple days with me. And she's actually a freshman in high school. So last week, we were at a MOVE event, and it was the first time she ever went to one of these as a student, which is great because she's been going since she was like 7 weeks old. Literally, her first move, she slept in a dresser drawer. We pulled the drawer out of the dresser, put some blankets in it. That was her bed. Anyway, about 7 years ago, I'd say that about 7 years ago, we were at a MOVE conference in Florida, and I'm during the worship service, and I look over, and I see her kind of writing in her little journal. Here's a little picture of baby Claire, and I didn't think too much of it because she's a little journal. I think there it is. She's just kind of writing, sweet little thing. And then afterwards, I kind of noticed what she was doing, and it turns out she, and even at that age, had memorized Psalm 23, and she was writing the whole thing out. We got a picture of the whole thing for it. So here it is. This is what she wrote, Psalm 23. She couldn't spell, but hey, it's Psalm 23. I promise it's there. I want you to hear these words. I want you to hear them. I want you to hear the whole psalm. So let me just let these words soak over us together. It is Psalm 23. It is a psalm of David, and it goes like this. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Everybody say amen. This is a prayer. This is Psalm 23. And there's a part of me that really just wants to spend the rest of our time just saying it over and over and over. I don't want to preacher-splain this thing, you know. But I do think it would be beneficial for us to unpack some things. So let's key in on this phrase, I lack nothing. I want you to think about this for a moment, because I want you to imagine what it would be like for you to be able to say this and mean it 100%. Not like if you had a few more things. Not if you were living somebody else's life, but you in your present life, to be able to look at that life with all that you have and all that you don't, all that is great and all that is not, and say, I lack nothing. I have everything I need. I mean, this is what we want. This is what you want. This is what I want. This is every story we tell. Every story we tell, whether it's a book or a movie, is a story about some character who's looking for that thing they need to have everything they need. Now, I don't care what it is. It could be Horcruxes to destroy, or a ring of power, or a fountain of youth to drink from, or infinity stones to harness, or it could be like less symbolic, and it's like happiness, or romance, or love, or power, or money, or success, or revenge, or healing. Whatever it is, like we're after something, and all of our stories are about seeking that thing that once I find it, I finally have what I need. And the psalm says, well, you can actually have that. Here you go. Here it is, it's yours. And let's look at it in context, because of course, I lack nothing is the second half of the first verse. And so let's look at the pieces. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. And it's not like random. It's not like the Lord is my shepherd, and in unrelated news, I lack nothing. No, like you get it, there's a logic to it. I lack nothing because the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd, therefore I lack nothing. That's the claim. To have the Lord as my shepherd is to have everything I need. And then the psalm unpacks this a little bit by talking about some of what the shepherd provides. First of all, it talks about how the shepherd provides us with rest. That's the theme of the week. He makes me lie down in green pastures and leads me beside quiet waters. Now, I don't know a whole lot about sheep. I did not grow up on a farm. I'm not like a farm animal. I mean, farm animals are great, but it's not my world. But I do know enough about sheep to know they're kind of bouncy. You know what I'm talking about? You ever seen a video of sheep and they're just kind of bouncing all over the place? And they're kind of like little toddlers, you know, or freshmen. They just bounce all over, and we love you deeply. But one of the things about sheep is they don't like to stay still, and that's what I noticed here, that you have these bouncy creatures and they're laying down on the grass. They're laying down on it. You know what sheep normally do when they're around grass, right? They eat it. So why are they laying down? Because they've already eaten enough. They're satisfied. The shepherd provides you with enough satisfaction that you can just lay down and rest. So he provides us with rest. And he also provides us with restoration. It says he refreshes my soul, or older translations, he restores my soul. The idea is that the parts are put back together again so that you become whole. I heard a story about this guy who did like a kind of a safari tour in Africa. And he was going around different areas, and he was just moving. You know, he didn't have a long time there, and so he was trying to see everything that he could. And after 2 days of just busting it, just going to all these different places, they come to the third day, and they're with these local guides. And their local guide said, today we will not go anywhere. Today we're going to stay where we are. And these, tourists are like, well, why? Are you tired? And they said, well, we're not tired, but we've been moving a lot these past couple of days. And now we need to stay still to allow our souls to catch up to our bodies. Now, I confess to you, I don't really know what the heck that means, but there's something there, like I know what it's like to feel like I'm split into different parts. Like there's a part of me at work, and there's a part of me at home, and there's a part of me at school. Y'all know what it's like to feel like you're sort of unintegrated. And it's the promise here is that the various pieces and parts of your life will come back together. It's like if you're ever on the computer and there's something wrong with the website and everything's kind of wonky and all the pieces are weird, you hit refresh, and then it reloads and everything's back in its proper place. When he says he refreshes your soul, he's talking about the restoration of your soul. So he provides you rest and restoration. And he provides a roadmap too. says he guides us along the right paths for his name's sake. And that word path it's not like a street. It's like if you've ever been on a dirt road or if you've ever been hiking through the woods where there's a trail and you know the trail, not because somebody paved it, but because enough people have walked that path before. And so you're following in their footsteps, and that's how you know the way. And that's the idea, is that the shepherd knows where to take you because the shepherd's been there before. These are the things that the shepherd provides you. And when I think about this, it kind of hits me that this kind of hits us. I mean, this kind of lands even today. This many years later, it sort of fits what we need. And it reminded me of, I read a book about, it's actually a book about being high schoolers today. It came out last year, and it's called Never Enough. And this author, this lady, this researcher was talking about how you guys are facing unique pressures that are unlike what any previous generation has faced. And she interviewed this high school, I think she was a junior or senior from the state of Washington. And this is a pretty successful girl, this young lady she was interviewing. And she was a track star, and she was a straight A student, and she was involved in all these sort of activities. And she was asking her, like, what's a typical day? And she said, well, a typical day is I get up about 3 or 4 a.m. and I try to study for a couple hours, and then I go to morning practice, and then I clean up, and then I go to school, and after school, I go to afternoon practice, and so we run a bit more, and then I come home, and I try to eat, and I get a little bit of work done. I usually go to bed about midnight, 1 or 2 a.m., and then I get up a couple hours later and do it all again. And the lady's like, my word, when do you rest? Like, how do you ever actually just sleep? And she said, well, I guess the thing is, on most days, whenever I'm at afternoon track practice, the first thing we do is we run some laps around the track to get warmed up. And she said, usually when I'm running my afternoon laps, I close my eyes and pretend that I'm sleeping. Right? I thought, man, if there's not a more apt parable for today, I don't know what is. We're literally running around in circles with our eyes closed, hoping not to fall off the track. That's us. We need rest and restoration and a roadmap. And the psalm says, y'all can have them. They're right here. And that's a great promise, but you're wise if you're like, yeah, anybody can say that. It's one thing to make the promise. It's another thing to keep it. It don't matter if you're sincere, if you're not sufficient. Like I could tell you, y'all, I got everything you need, or I could tell my children, I'm going to give you everything you need, and I'm totally sincere in that. But it doesn't matter if I'm sincere because I'm not sufficient to keep the promise. I can't do that. And so if you're hearing these promises and you're thinking, well, how do I know that this is legit? Great question. And it raises the question, who is the shepherd? And maybe some of y'all are like, well, I mean, I know it's literally the first words of the psalm. We know who the shepherd is. The Lord is my shepherd. That's great, but maybe not so fast. Fair enough, but do you know what that means? And maybe you're thinking, I think so. Isn't the Lord just another word for God? And it's well, kind of, but not exactly. It's not just another word for God. It's his name. And it's a strange word in the original language. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this when you're looking at your Bible, but you ever notice how in the Old Testament part of the Bible, when you see the word Lord, sometimes it looks normal, like capital L and then lowercase O-R-D, but sometimes it's in all caps, L-O-R-D, all capital letters. It's not just about emphasis. It's not just like this is their way of saying Lord. No, it's a different word, and it's a strange word because it's a name. It's actually the name of God, and the reason why it's written out as Lord is because we don't actually know how to say it. The name of God that he gave to us is 4 letters. It corresponds in English to Y-H-W-H, but there's no vowels. And the people of God in the old times wouldn't ever say the word out loud. Anytime they'd come upon this word, they'd say the different word for Lord, which was Adonai, and so that's why it's translated Lord. So we don't really know exactly what this word is supposed to sound like. You've seen it before perhaps, and maybe you've heard somebody say Yahweh. That's our best guess for how it's supposed to sound. And we don't know how to say it, but we do know what it means. Literally, it just means I am. That God says, I am. In other words, he just is. Now, this is something you can't say. I can't just say I am, period. Neither can you. We have to say, I am because someone else. Y'all know how this works. You exist because of your parents. And you continue to exist because people have fed you and clothed you. And you have something to say because people taught you. You are because someone else. God doesn't depend on anyone else. He just is. And so when he says, I am, he's saying, I am completely self-sufficient within myself. He depends on no one for who he is. And that's why he's able to give you everything you need, because he actually needs nothing. And maybe you're thinking, how do I know this? How do I'm not just making this up? And the answer is because God himself told us this was his name.
If you want to understand this word Lord, then you have to back up a little bit and you have to look forward. But we'll back up first about 500 years before the poem was written. It's a different time in the story of God's people. And it was a time, you may have heard the name of a guy named Moses. Moses was a guy that God wanted to be a leader, but Moses didn't know this at the time because then, in that period, God's people were enslaved to the world superpower of their day, the Egyptian empire. And Moses is a fugitive on the run. He's hiding out in the wilderness. And he's just walking along one day, and he looks over, and he sees there's this bush that's on fire, but it's not burning up. That detail's going to be important. We're going to come back to it in a moment. There's this bush that's on fire, but it's not burning up. And he turns aside, and he's like, what's going on? And he steps over to it, and God actually speaks to him out of this burning bush. And God says to him, I want you to go and lead my people out of slavery. And Moses is like, are you serious? Me? I'm literally a fugitive on the run. How could I possibly do this? And he starts offering all sorts of excuses. And at a certain point, God's telling him to do this. And Moses says, I don't even know who you are. Like when I go to these people, who am I supposed to tell them sent me? What am I supposed to tell them about you? And God says, tell them I am. That's my name. He said, you tell them the I am sent me to you. What God is doing is he's correcting Moses' posture. See, Moses thinks it's all on him. Moses thinks God is asking him to do some big, great thing that he has to figure out on his own. And he's saying, well, I can't do this. And God's saying, you think like I need you? Let me make sure and flip this around. You need me, and I have everything you need, and everything's going to be fine. That's the point of the fire. You all know how fire works, right? Not like fireworks, but fire works. You have a piece of wood, and if you set the piece of wood on fire, eventually the wood burns. It's gone because the fire needs the wood in order to make a flame. God is the kind of flame that doesn't need to consume the wood in order to burn. He just burns. He just is. He can give you everything you need because he needs nothing from you or anyone else. That's the lesson Moses had to learn. Now, if you really want to understand the psalm, you have to look back to the I am revelation to Moses, and you got to look forward about 1,000 years after the psalm. I know I'm taking you a lot of places, but stay with me. You got to come to Jesus. About 1,000 years after David and the psalm, Jesus shows up on the scene, and he shows up to reveal who God is and to provide salvation for all people. And one of the things that Jesus came to do was to clarify his identity. And one of the places he did this is in John chapter 10, verse 11, where he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Did you catch that? Now, maybe you knew that when Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd, the shepherd recalls Psalm 23. But it's deeper than that. In one sentence, Jesus actually says, I fulfill both halves of the first verse of the psalm. I am the good shepherd. So Psalm 23:1, the I am is my shepherd. John 10:11, I am the good shepherd. Jesus is the shepherd of Psalm 23, which means the whole psalm is about him, which means Jesus is the one who makes you lie down in green pastures. And Jesus is the one who guides you beside quiet waters. And Jesus is the one who restores your soul. And Jesus is the one who guides you along the right paths for his name's sake. He is the shepherd. He is the Lord of Psalm 23. And Jesus provides everything you need. Now check how this works, because this is not just sincerity, this is sufficiency. Jesus can provide everything you need because Jesus has everything you need. And Jesus has everything you need because Jesus is everything you need. He's the shepherd. He's the good one. He's the one you can trust. You don't get these things that you want by going after them directly. You don't get rest by going and getting rest. You get rest by receiving the one in whom rest may be found. You don't find rest and restoration and a roadmap by seeking after them. You find them by seeking him. He is our shepherd. And yet, I need to slow down. I can't say that. I don't know. I don't know you well enough yet to know. I can't say he's our shepherd. I can say he is mine, and I can ask, who's yours? You do have one. Make no mistake, you have a shepherd. The question is not whether you have a shepherd, but whether your shepherd can be trusted. You will look to something to give you rest. What? You will search somewhere to center your soul. Where? You will follow in the footsteps of someone to guide your way. Who? I know I lack nothing because I know my shepherd. Do you?